microphone.
Hello, is that better?
Yes.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to the town meeting. Would everybody join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Our first order of business is to elect a moderator. Do I have any nominations for moderator? Yes.
I'd like to nominate Matt Grimes.
Okay, Matt Grimes. I have a second for Matt Grimes. Are there any other nominations? Not hearing any. All those in favor of Matt Grimes becoming our moderator, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that carries. Matt, you're muted.
Thank you, First Selectman Dunn. To start the meeting, the first order of business is to have our town clerk, Andrea DeStefan, read the call of the meeting. However, if the House would like to waive the reading of the call, they may do that, or we can have it read. Would anyone like to make a motion to waive? Mr. Jaffe. I'm sorry, give your name and address for the record.
Will Meagle, 58 Tower Road.
Okay, so there's a motion by Mr. Jaffe, seconded by Mr. Meikle. Is there any discussion on waiving the call of the meeting? Mrs. Carr?
She should read it, so it's on the record and the public can hear what it is.
If the House is agreeable to that, they can certainly vote down the motion to waive. Any other discussion on waiving the call of the meeting? Hearing none, I'll try your minds. Those in favor of waiving the call of the meeting signify by saying aye and raising your hands. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Good evening on behalf of the Boards of Finance, Selectmen of Education. I see members of all three boards here present in attendance. Before we present the resolution, I will give an overview of how this meeting will go. We're going to hear a presentation tonight from the First Selectman on the proposed 2024-25 budget. After that, anyone in attendance is free to ask whatever questions they wish to any of our officials present here tonight, provided those are questions that pertain to the budget. Additionally, anyone is free to make any comments in favor of or against one or both of the proposed budgets. When there are no further questions or comments from anyone in the audience, there will be a vote on setting the date for a referendum on the budgets. After we set the date of the referendum, we will hear from our town treasurer with his annual report. Now, at this annual town meeting, if 4% or more of the voters attend, they have a right to reduce the budgets proposed by the Board of Finance before going to referendum. Seeing that the attendance is below the threshold of 4%, the budgets presented by the Board of Finance will be the budgets voted on at referendum. Therefore, the primary function tonight is to set the date of the referendum, which must be between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. and held 8 to 14 days following this meeting. As you will hear in the resolution, the Board of Selectmen has recommended the date to be held May 21st, which is day 14, so unless this body attempts to amend that date once the resolution is on the floor, that date is recommended by the Board of Selectmen will advance. We can either have Town Attorney Tom Beecher read the resolution for the budget referendum, or like we did with the call, we could waive the reading of the resolution. It's really up to the House. Would anyone like to make a motion to waive the reading of the resolution? Mr. Belden, is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Stefan, any discussion on waiving the reading of the resolution?
Should read it.
Okay, hearing none, I will try your minds. Those in favor of waiving the reading of the resolution signify by saying aye and raising your hands.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed?
Should read it.
There are two in opposition. Motion carries. First Selectman Dunn.
Thank you.
Oh, before we do that, can somebody make a motion to put the resolution on the floor of May 21st as the referendum date? Somebody want to make that motion? Mr. Dunn, there's a second? Is it? Jillian Doherty is seconding the motion, and the resolution is on the floor. Mr. Dunn.
Again, thank you everyone for attending. I'll see if I can get this thing to work at our town meeting. We have a resolution. We've gone through the reading of the resolutions and the waivers. We're at the presentation level. When we look at the town's operating budget, these are where we're spending our money and where we propose the budget to be. Education is approximately 70% of our total budget, as is normal. It has always been somewhere in the 68 to 70% percent of our budget. General government is 12%, public safety, our police, fire are about 10%, public works is just over 4%, health and welfare is just under 1%, culture and recreation, that's parks and rec and other activities like that, is about 3%, and our contingency is 0.6% of the budget. In the town's operating budget, the net status quo increase is about $250,978. That is primarily salaries. New initiatives in public safety, we have to pay for the second half of the new officer that we have, the second half of the new school resource officer, and the second half of the new ASSO. And in the police department, they did ask for and receive an increase of one person into the administrative ranks. So they have 4 in the administrative ranks. And we are putting in for a first half of a new officer. The police department and the chief of police and the board of selectmen and the board of finance had long discussions about this. And we've had a 34-person police department for about 20 years. And the town has grown from when I moved here in '83 of 11,000 people to 17,500 some odd. And we do need to increase our police force. The demands on the police are growing, they're increasing, so we think that's a reasonable thing to do. We have to upgrade the tasers. They are now on a subscription model where you buy them, after 5 years you have to replace them. The same is true for a couple other things. A few years ago, we gave the police, and the police began to use Axion body cameras. We had signed a contract with Axion. It's one of the larger providers, and they do a good job for a limited amount of data because it was new to us. We weren't sure how much data our police department would generate, and it turns out it's a lot more data, and we have to keep it for a lot longer than we originally thought. So we are going to increase the Axion storage. It's a legal issue. We have to be able to produce body cam footage for anyone who requests it. The police social services liaison for $50,548. This started approximately 2 years ago in that budget, where we have someone who works with both the police department, social services, our senior center, and other staff to help those people who need it. This person has proved to be incredibly valuable to the town. In one case, we had a person who was calling 911 at least once a week for help with getting up, other issues. That has almost completely gone away now. That allows our police to work, and fire also gets called. It allows our police and fire department and EMS to free up time so that we don't have to hire additional people. He's done a great job. For the fire departments, we're required by law to upgrade the turnout gear, and they have a little bit more, they have more insurance on them because they have more vehicles. We do have in the EMS section, if you remember, the fire department, the center company, decided to bring our EMS services in-house. So all of our EMS personnel now work for the center fire company. The town supports that by funding it. There is a question on the final numbers, so we put a contingency in the budget for personnel under EMS of $15,000. Parks and Rec has come to us, and they made a very good argument before all the boards that with the increased amount of work they're doing, we have the Greenway, we have the downtown area, we have more open space that they're taking care of. They made a good argument for adding one worker. That will be approximately about $79,000. That's with benefits, but it will be offset by some overtime drops that we think we'll get by adding a person. In general government, our IT restructuring will cost us about $49,000. The reason for this is on the town side, we have one IT manager for the entire town. If he is out or unavailable, we have no one to monitor our computers, to help people, to fix them, to address any cyber attacks. In this day and age, with the difficulties we have and with the amount of attacks on towns and cities, universities, governments, and corporations, we need more redundancy. So what we're going to do is the head of IT for the school system, is going to become the overall head of IT for both the town and the schools. Our current IT director will remain IT director for the town, and we're going to hire an IT part-time tech specialist who can do the lower level stuff, changing computer printers, connecting computers, reformatting computers, to allow our IT manager and the school's IT manager to do the things they're best at. Training people, making sure our systems are secure. It builds redundancy and it builds bench strength for us. And that is a really good thing. We have in the budget under Public Works, there is a cell tower on Vale Road that has been constructed. It would cost us $21,000 a year to put our emergency services equipment on that tower, so we put that in the budget. We put in not a whole year because we don't believe we'll be up and running on that till November or December. And so those total new initiatives total about $560,000, and the total budget increase there is 3.7%. On the education side, John, would you like to talk a little bit about the education side, or would you like me to? That's not the answer I wanted. The Board of Ed, as you know, has had significant increases in a lot of their status quo costs with their day-to-day operating expenses. They came forward, just their status quo increases. This is not adding teachers, this is not adding staff, not adding personnel, just simply doing what they do every year, educate our system, had an increase of 5.37%. This is driven largely by inflation, by the cost of electricity. We don't have control over special education. We don't have total control over transporting our students. So heating, oil, electricity have all gone up. Their budget has been gone through with a fine-tooth comb, both by the Finance Committee of the Board of Ed, the Board of Ed itself, myself, the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Finance. There are some additions to the costs associated with new state mandates is about $220,000. ARP, ESSER, and ARPA phase-in is $184,000. If you remember, we did have ARPA money, and what we're doing, we phased it in over time, but now that ARPA money is going away. So we have to fund these operations as we go along. Program investments of $33,000, and maintenance at the high school and Wiskinger Middle School, $82,000, and an enrollment study, which we do every 5 years, John, about?
We
Is
try
that
to.
correct? 5, 6 years? So the Board of Ed's adopted budget had a 6.43% increase. The reduction to that by the Board of Selectmen, the First Selectman, the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Finance was 1.44%. So their budget increase this year is 4.99%. We thought this would be interesting to see. This is our debt service budget. In the last 2 years, you see a significant increase in our debt payments. This is primarily, virtually all of it, is a new school. We knew that. We knew this was coming. We planned for it when we built the school. We planned to use excess revenue to soften the increases, and that's what we have done. And as an example, if this year we are paying all of the principal and interest on the 2 tranches of loans that we have for the new school. This year's increase in the debt is about $1.2 million just for the schools. If we did not have that, the overall increase in the budget to the town would be about 2.85%. So I think that shows that we've done a pretty good job in managing our increase in costs. Our capital budget, this is very similar. We now are paying 100% of our roads in cash. We are trying to bond less and also not bond for small items. We don't want to borrow for $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 items. We only want to go to bonding on huge items, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 and above, and that's what we're doing in this budget. We're paying $2.9 million in cash for capital improvements, and we have a small grant to pay for that. The total capital budget is $6.2 million, and this includes, on the school side, we hired a company to do an in-depth review Wiskineer and the Brookfield High School. They came in and made a number of suggestions, and they gave us a plan over 10 years, the things that we needed to do to maintain these buildings in good condition so that they will last another 40 years. That 10-year plan is about $12 million. And this year, I believe we're putting in over $1.4 million, I believe, in Wiskineer and Brookfield High School. On our revenue side, there isn't a super fancy story to tell there. The taxes are up about 4.86% over the prior year. They're over what they were. We have increases in almost every single category over the budget. And the reason being is that this town, the Board of Finance and the other boards, creates very, very conservative budgets. We estimate our revenues conservatively, and we estimate our expenses at exactly what we think they're going to be. And that usually and hopefully leaves us with a small surplus at the end of the year, and absolutely no need to go back to voters and ask them for additional money, which they would deny us, and rightly so, in my opinion. So this year, the ARPA funding for lost revenue will and has to be used before December of 2024. It's use it or lose it. So we are doing that. The capital plan and the spending plan covers that. This is partially covered the debt bubble for the new schools as we projected back in 2018. An advantage for the town is we have, in the last 15 years or so, the highest interest rates we're earning on the money that we have in the bank. It's over 5%. This is, 3 years ago, we were earning 1/10 of 1%. So that has added substantially to the revenue for the town, and that's a good thing. I don't know how long that is going to last. The Fed Chairman Powell just last week decided to leave interest rates, the Fed rate, at where it is. They're still concerned about inflation. So I would think for the foreseeable future, the interest rates we will earn on the money we have in the bank will remain stable. That's not a guarantee, though. So overall, taxes would go up to residents 3.87% with this budget. We urge everyone to please vote for this budget. It was gone over by the boards in great detail. There is no fat in the school side. There is no fat on the town side. This budget does move the town forward to where we want to be. Having good schools, good roads, good police, good fire, EMS, all of those services that we need at reasonable costs. So thank you. I will turn it back to Matt for any public comment and questions.
Okay, the time has come for questions and comments. Once I recognize you, you are free to come to this microphone over here, and please state your name and address audibly for the record so Mrs. DeStefan can get it. I would ask that anyone that is wishing to ask a question of any of our officials, please state which person or persons it's directed to, and direct your question to the chair, and I will call on those officials to come up to one of these tables, take one of the hand mics, and answer it. If you do not have a question and wish to speak in favor of or against the budget or budgets, you're free to do so, but please again, state your name and address for the record. This meeting belongs to you, and want to make sure all questions and comments have the opportunity to air. Please do not ask to come up a second time until we're sure everyone has had the opportunity to speak once. That said, who would like to speak first? Raise your hand or come to the microphone. Who would like? Mr. Correa.
Andy Correa, 45 West
Turn the mic on.
Oh, sorry.
It's on the top.
Andy Correa, 45 West Wiskineer Road. I had a question for Mr. Dunn. Can you please explain what you meant by the second half of personnel and first half?
Go ahead, Mr. Dunn.
Yes, when we're using ARPA money, we use ARPA money to pay for some of the people that we were hiring. And this year, the ARPA money is flowing off. So half of the salary needs to be paid in the operating budget now because the ARPA money is going away. And for the police officer that
So
we're
is that
hiring,
half in time or 50% of across the whole year? Or?
50% for this coming fiscal year. Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And for the police officer, we are funding that at a half salary because we anticipate hiring that police officer in January, halfway through the year.
Okay, so I'm just curious, like, why wasn't that considered in status quo, or is that?
Because we want to make our budgets as open as possible, and changes like that, which are significant amounts of money, we want to make sure the town is aware of what we're doing.
Okay. Let's see. And regarding the education budget, there's legal spending, special education, legal.
Sorry, Andy, who's this directed to?
It's to Mr. Burrell.
Dr. Little? Okay.
Dr. Bill has a little bit of a setup. So there's legal spending. We have a special education attorney. That attorney is known in a case called Hernandez versus the Enfield Board of Education, to have been found to discriminate against children, against a Board of Ed member. And the actual finding was she was clarifying in a federal pleading that the disabled person she wouldn't accommodate didn't understand because she was recommending discriminating against children. So my question is that good use of taxpayers' money to hire that contractor to defend the board against families?
Dr. Burrell? Did you use one of the table mics? Sure.
Without getting into the merits of what Mr. Correa is talking about, the board actually is looking into interviewing new counsel tomorrow night. So we're always looking into things and working on things.
So when you make that kind of decision that was known 2 years ago, the decision was affirmed in January, the board was informed, why would the town have made a decision to pay the board to pay that contractor for 5 months when they could have picked up the phone and called Shipman?
The decision has been made to go through the interview process through the board the way it's going through. So that's
So how do we know we
the decision
won't get a
was made.
similar decision?
I don't know that we can predict the future, Mr. Correa.
We got to stick to the budget questions, please.
Okay. Now in terms of my comments on the budget and support, I support voting for the town budget and against the school budget. The town budget, is scrutinized at a granular level, and the increase reflects important maintenance and improvement to infrastructure while reducing headcount and operational expenses. A 1% status quo increase is actually really a real negative, a real decrease when you take into account inflation, and built-in cost of living increases. A 2.5% new initiative, where all the initiatives made sense with the growth of the town, I think is responsible. Its creation and review was not just the first selectman proposing numbers, but a team sport of town employees, the full board of selectmen and the board of finance working together that we all saw through multiple meetings online. So I think there's no reason not to support the town budget. In general, I'm more than willing to support robust investments in our schools. However, the budget presented and how it has been comprised, reviewed, or a better way to say it is not reviewed, hasn't been to the level that it should be for a $52 or $53 million budget. The Board of Ed is responsible for proposing a budget that will meet the needs of students and will pass. If you propose a budget that won't pass, you're not doing your job. They proposed a 6% increase without exercising options operationally that meaningfully would look at how could we deliver services to children. Additionally, we know for at least the past 8 years, the district has not been delivering services to us, in the special education. We had a review that from a regional area that regional RESC came in and did a review and came up with significant problems that have been ongoing for 8 years. The response, one of the recommendations was create a strategic plan. The response from our superintendent was, I like making strategic plans. My reaction to that was, that's great. It would have been nice if you liked making that part of the strategic plan 5 years ago. The children would have benefited 5 years ago. When a couple of board members and parents pushed back on specific items in the budget, asking, for changes in adding more special education resources, reducing curriculum coaches, and discussions about some pseudo-administrative positions, the board didn't materially change anything operationally. The public comment of the Board of Ed chair at the joint BOS, BOE, and BOF meeting was that they hoped the estimates would come down, that they hoped people would vote for the budget and they wouldn't have to go through this again. Last year, when the budget failed, 2 Board of Finance members suggested just putting the budget back out there and hoping more parents come out and vote for it. Hope is not a plan, right? A plan of hoping something happens is a plan for failure. In Bethel, our neighbors, they have 25% more children. They have 5 schools, we have 3. They have basically the same budget. They also have our special education director from 5 years ago who left because that she couldn't do the things that she needed to do for children, and that's why she left. They don't have any problems. Their special education department's doing really well. She turned it around. I wish we had those options. They recently went up a few spaces in the best high schools in the country, from 38 to 33. We went down 11 points. Some of those rankings are, you can pick and choose your metrics, but the reality is we're going down, they're going up. We could have had that outcome. They proposed a 2.99% increase, and they did so by operationalizing concerns, understanding they couldn't pass a budget. Our administration and our board are not doing their jobs. Thankfully, the Board of Finance has showed more leadership, but the Board of Education has been failing in basic governance tasks. Legal services were put out to bid for the first time in 12 years, okay? That was from one lawyer. The other lawyer had been here for 16 years. The Board of Education policy is for the superintendent and the board to review lawyers' written performance every year. Every year. That hasn't been done at all. I asked the Board of Education to do that before they put this out for services. The lawyer that I was discussing, that should have come up in her review, as should have a training session that she had with special education teachers on how to eliminate the effectiveness of paraprofessionals in PPT meetings. And in fact, in the slide that she has, that activist special education lawyers now have, and are you taking it to the Connecticut Board of Human Rights, it said, be careful about paraprofessionals in your PPTs because they could go native. Dr. Brill had told...
Order, Mr. Grimes, is this about the budget?
Yes, sir.
Is it about the budget? Keep your comments to the budget, I would ask. Please.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that was a lawyer that we're paying for now that we don't know will or will not be in the budget. Let's see. But through this process, so when the concerns were brought forward to the board about who we're budgeting for lawyers, the board refused to change lawyers. They deferred to the superintendent. Through this whole budget creation process, the board deferred to the superintendent. They didn't change anything. The Board of Education is a seven-member body elected by the people. They spent less than 2 hours deliberating on the budget publicly for a $53 million budget. The only changes that have come to the budget before the first selectman or Board of Selectmen reduced the budget was sharper estimates. Nothing else was changed. But, we did have, with school start time changes that did not result in meaningful benefits, and and with bus logistics that ate up anticipated additional seat time, as well as disturbing school activities happened, there was no discussion about whether we should roll that change back. But it drove a bus shortage, which drove bus costs that increased our budget. Taxpayers have to pay for that with very little to no benefit. There are a few other basic failures of the BOE. They haven't followed their own rules, acting in partisan ways, prematurely dismissing complaints, making unilateral decisions.
Budget.
They have secret,
Stay on budget, please.
Please,
they've had 4 to 5 secret self-evaluation meetings. The reason why this is important, they have had 4 to 5 secret evaluation meetings in executive session to complain about parents speaking at BOE meetings, asking for accountability regarding special education, and ongoing failures that happened for 9 years. The thing is, they couldn't even follow their own rules.
Mr. Curry, could you summarize your position on the
Yeah,
budget, please?
yes, I will.
Thank you.
They screwed up how to go into executive session 4 times in a row after getting training from a lawyer, right? But they didn't focus on how to manage the budget. So how can we trust this board, this superintendent with a $53 million budget when you compare to other towns that proactively say, how do we keep this affordable? How do we ensure that we're delivering special education services? Are we listening to parents? Are we working together? Are we exercising the problem? I personally can't support this budget if we're going to have a board and a superintendent that are not going to address the issues, but are going to focus on catering to the superintendent. The superintendent works for the board, not the other way around. What's your problem?
You.
Yeah?
Please. Could the audience not go back and forth? Are you finished, Andy? Are you finished?
Yeah, so I recommend to my neighbors to support the town budget and vote down the school budget. Thank you.
I don't want to impose a time limit on anybody because this is your meeting. However, I just remind everybody that if you're asking a question, make sure it pertains to the budget. If you're making comments, make sure it pertains to the budget. Who would like to speak next? Mrs. Carr?
Yes.
If you're asking a question, just please say who it's directed to.
Good evening, Tara Carr, 54 Indian Trail. I have a few questions and one statement. Just for the record, I think Mr. Correa just stated that the Board of Selectmen was in full support of the operating budget for the town. That is not a fact. I did not, and I still do not support the town budget. I just want to be clear on that. And these questions are specific to why I do not support the town operating budget. And they are all for Mr. Dunn.
Oh, for Mr. Dunn, okay.
I won't address the Board of Ed because I think Mr. Correa just did a great job on that. So thank you. So Mr. Dunn stated earlier that the town has grown. What is the population of Brookfield?
Go ahead.
Last number I got was 17,552 people.
Is that off of the internet?
No, that's from the state.
The census, what official number
The
are you
state
getting?
issues reports that shows all of the indices of each town, the size of the town, the mileage.
And
the
what
square
year
footage.
is that number from?
Last year, I believe.
Okay, so you're about to add 80,000 plus for, I think that's how much it was, for a new police officer. And the chief had told me the ratio of officer per capita is 1 to 500. So we're just blindly throwing in this new police officer when we don't know how many people we have in the town of Brookfield.
Mr. Dunn.
I just told you exactly how many people we have in Brookfield, 17,552.
And you trust that number?
Yeah, I believe that number is correct.
Okay, next question. The social services liaison, I'm a huge proponent of that individual. They do incredible work. I witnessed it daily firsthand when I was the first select woman. My question, however, is how many other towns have this position?
Mr. Dunn.
I don't know how many other towns have this position. I know it's grown from talking to other first selectmen and mayors. The needs have grown in towns, but I don't know what that number is. I think Brookfield might be ahead of some other towns.
And in addition, if we are adding a new police officer, why then would we need the social services liaison when we have another fully funded police officer?
Because our police officers are not social workers, they're police officers.
But they're trained to address the example you gave, which was a 911 call
Yep,
several times over.
right. They are trained to respond to any call that comes into the town, just as our fire and EMS do the same thing. If we get a person that calls, say they fell, our EMS are going to respond, and so are our police. When we get in cases where people are using 911 as, for example, a cab ride to the hospital, that is a misuse of the resources of the town. We pay a lot of money for our EMS people and our police, and responding to that type of call is expensive and not a good use of our police. Additionally, many of the people our social services manager works with have issues that are mental or physical, and the arrival and of a police officer, somebody in uniform and with a gun, sometimes is very stressful for them. Our social worker has been able to work with these people directly. He goes to their houses, he helps them, and he does a really good job, I think, which you just agreed to. So we have had, remember, we've had 34 police officers for more than, I think, 15 years. Adding a police officer, given the growth in the town, the development in the town, the needs of the town, is a reasonable thing to do now.
So the 17,552, I think you said,
Right.
what was it 3 years ago?
I don't know the number. It was somewhere.
So we don't know how the
16,
town has
Excuse me,
grown,
can we not have back and forth, just ask the
but
question?
we're adding another police officer. I do not support that.
I'm sorry, the town has grown from, I moved here in 1983.
That was a long time ago.
11,300 people then, and we had 34 police officers, I believe. Now we have 37 police officers, and our population has grown by about 65%.
Well, I'd like for you to share with the town where you're getting those statistics. Moving on to the Parks and Rec Department, I was just wondering if any analysis has been done to contract out some of these jobs instead of another employee at over $80,000.
Mr. Dunn.
Yes, we have looked at that. Right now, we need people who can work for us full-time. We do contract out a number of services, snow plowing, cutting the grass. We contracted out all of those years ago. And so these are staff that simply work in the town on various different jobs. We're doing work here, and we're digging holes here, and we're moving trees here, and clearing this on some of our open space. These are not jobs that you can contract out at a reasonable price. I just had my mulch beds cleaned out. It was $654. I don't think that the town wants to pay $60 or $70 an hour for people to do work that we can have a full-time employee do. There has been increased demands, as I said, on the needs of Parks and Rec. We have the whole Greenway they have to manage. We have the whole downtown they have to clean and manage and water all the plants. There are a lot of new demands put on Parks and Rec over the last 6 or 7 years, and we've never addressed it by adding staff. So I think it's a reasonable thing to do, and so did the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance.
I understand all of that, but the question was, has the analysis been done to compare?
No, because you can't go out to contract for various odd jobs that you do. Our Parks and Rec people are all over town doing hundreds of different things. If you tried to hire a company to do that, I think you would get an incredibly high price. I don't know for sure, but we want to keep as much as we can in-house where it makes sense, where we can define the job specifically, such as cutting all the grass on our fields. We know what it is, we know what we need done, we know when we need it done, and we put that out to bid and get very good prices. We eliminated back then, we eliminated one staff member when we contracted out our grass cutting. That person, I believe, retired, so we didn't replace him. The same thing with other services that we do. And we always will go out and look and see if there's a contractor who can do it better for less money, any time something comes up like that. But the work that our Parks and Rec people do on a day-to-day basis is not something I believe you can actually go out and bid.
Okay, regarding the IT merge or restructuring, this is completely unnecessary at $50,000. Twice I heard you say we need more redundancy, which is quite redundant. So what is it exactly that this part-timer will be doing that the town is footing the bill for when we have a director of IT on the town side that's completely capable of doing his job?
Mr. Dunn?
Right now, our IT director is out on leave. He will probably be out on leave for many weeks, if not months. So we have no one running our IT department on the town side. Now, the school's head of IT, Eric, has agreed, and some of his people have agreed, to work with us and help us to keep the town up and running and safe. The IT tech personnel that we're looking for as a part-time basis would support both our IT director and the director of overall IT for the town and the schools. We need that bench strength. Right now, I have no one.
So if the IT director is out and this budget is approved, who will hire the part-timer?
The town will. The IT tech specialist will work for the town, so the town will hire him. And he will report to the director of IT for both the town and the schools.
The director of IT for both the town and the schools.
Correct.
Okay. Public Works, you had a line item that said $21,000 per year for the cell tower rental.
Right.
Can this be covered in the $963,000 grant that Ms. Hayes said the town of Brookfield is getting?
It might possibly. That grant is a grant that was awarded to the town where we have significant concerns whether we will actually get the grant. The grant requires that you have not spent any money or committed money to a project for the grant to be eligible to be paid. As you know, because it happened under your administration, we did contract for new radio system before we got the grant. You are not also under the grant. The way we read the rules, and we've read them pretty carefully, we couldn't find the RFP, the request that the town put in for the grant. But it also requires that you not have been done any work yet for the grant to be eligible.
Oh, that's
we have
curious.
both committed the funding last year to buy the radios, and we have also started work on the radios. So it's, I can't say we're not going to get the grant, but there's considerable concern on the part of the town as to whether we will be eligible for that grant. If we were, yeah, I think the rent for the tower could come under that $963,000. The problem is that's a one-time payment. The payment for the tower will be rent every single year. So that belongs in the operating budget, not in the capital budget with a one-time expense. Because if we put it in the $963,000 grant, we get paid that once. So next year we'll be looking at $42,000 that we didn't plan for. So it's better to put it in the operating budget. It's going to be there forever.
It's all just very confusing because Ms. Hayes was standing shoulder to shoulder with our police and firemen not too long ago saying the grant was approved. Okay, part-timers. Which departments have part-timers?
Our land use department has a part-timer, our town clerk has a part-timer, and I believe our tax assessor brings in a part-timer during the summer.
And how does that position get filled?
There are interviews, just like we interview everyone else. And if we have somebody who worked for us last year and they did a good job, we bring them back.
Oh, kind of like moving an alternate up, I see.
Can you
So
keep your comments and questions to the budget and direct them to
the
the chair,
board, the
please?
finance department does not have a part-timer?
The finance department does have a part-timer, but she is going to be moving up into a full-time position because our part-timer, she is doing part-time work right now. Our full-timer is retiring from the town on Friday.
Who is that?
Nancy is moving into Lori's position.
And then will that Nancy's job be filled?
Yeah, we will probably hire someone part-time for that
So that's a
job.
full-time part-timer, and the other departments are not, correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by full-time, part-timer.
The others are sporadic or seasonal.
Oh, yeah, yes, it's a full-time year-round position.
So why does
is
that
part-
finance
Can we stop the dialogue back and forth, please, and either
I
ask the
want to
question-
know why the finance department is the only department that has a permanent part-timer.
Because they need it.
Not true, I sat there for 2 years and witnessed it.
Care to go
Okay.
further?
And the last thing I have is a statement regarding your revenue slide where you say that projected in 2018, a certain amount was allocated. Well, you didn't address the amount, but you said it was projected in 2018.
2018?
ARPA funding for lost revenue will be used before it expires in '24. This will cover the debt bubble for the new school as projected back in 2018.
Right.
But last night we learned there's an additional 200,000 of ARPA funding that is available to the residents of Brookfield. But it's going, where is that in this budget?
Right, it's not in this budget, it's in our general reserve. We had projects, if you remember, we had a committee that looked at and advised the town on what projects we should move forward with on the ARPA money. We had this discussion last night, we've had it previously at Board of Selectmen meetings. A number of those projects either did not come to fruition or did not spend the entire amount allocated to them. That money went back to the town as $200,000. We also have an additional 1.9 million that was reserved for this debt bubble, bringing that total to $2.1 million.
So you've decided for the taxpayers or the recipients of the ARPA grant, the residents of this town, that the $200,000 should just be used to reduce taxes versus for something else that the residents might want it for?
I'm confused at your question because we sat down as a Board of Selectmen and we knew this. And we
And I
planned
voted
out
no
our
for the budget, and
and
my
we did
stance
it.
remains. So
We
I
did it 10
encourage
years.
the townspeople to look very closely with a fine-tooth comb.
Okay, okay. Can we
Thank
have
you.
order, Greer, please?
You
Thank
spoke, now I can speak.
Go ahead, Mr. Dunn.
This was not raised at all during our discussions on the budget. I wish it was because we could have a more substantive discussion. These funds will be used to offset expenses that we have, capital projects that we have. We are, luckily, after we did all the work to meet the requirements to get the ARPA money, right, 2 weeks after we were finished meeting all the rules and regulations of the federal government, they said, if you're under $10 million in ARPA money, you can treat it all as lost revenue. So literally, hundreds of hours of work was not needed. So we can use the funds that we have for any project, anything that we think is reasonable and is needed by the town. I'm not in favor, usually, of taking money, one-time money, and using it to pay operating expenses, right? We're seeing towns, a couple of them, that are having 8 and 10% tax increases this year because they use their ARPA money to offset their day-to-day budget. Once that ARPA money runs out, you have to make that up. We didn't do that in Brookfield. We used that ARPA money primarily for the programs that we brought out to our residents and to businesses, and to offset the debt bubble, which are one-time expenses. So I think we did a really good job, and the Board of Finance poured over this for weeks back in 2018, 19, 20, 21, and 22 to manage this money carefully and safely for the town.
In the essence of time, I'm going to ask any other speakers to start by saying if they're asking a question or if they're speaking in favor of or against the budget. Who would like to speak next? Mr. Montero.
Matt, do I have to say my name?
Yes.
Yeah. Austin Montero, 17 Dairy Farm. This is for the first selectman and the superintendent and maybe Wendy as well. This is just more of a general comment question. Normally we get, 10 to 12% turnout on these budgets, which is obviously not great. I know that's a problem we have pretty much everywhere. But to me, a budget with only 10% of the voting populace voting is not really the voice of the people. So what do you guys plan to do or have in place from a marketing standpoint, engagement standpoint, to get those numbers up to a much higher level so we get more of a representative voice of the people of Brookfield?
I agree with you. The numbers who come out to vote for referendum are not great. We have gone out to all of the PTOs and asked them to get all the parents to go out. We put it on the town website. I know the schools send out messages to parents. We try to get it out as much as we can. It just seems like people don't want to come out and vote, and I agree with you. This is a town meeting form of government, so this group here, if we wanted to, could approve this budget. It's whoever shows up.
Sure.
And we decided to go to referendum to get more input from our residents, right? So you can't just have one group overwhelm a town meeting. And I agree with you, I wish we could get more, and I ask everyone here to talk to your friends, neighbors, to come out to vote.
Yes, and I agree. I think we have 38 people here, still to Steve, and 11 watching on YouTube currently. So I guess the better question is, how do I want to verse this? It's just growing engagement. I forgot what I was going to ask you actually, but
That's all right.
you know, it's yeah. I just wish we had more people engaged. I think a lot of people, and I don't want to speak for 14,000 voters, but maybe don't understand this stuff. Is there a way we can present it to the layman in a more digestible format? It's not confusing, and maybe each line item is, you know, I saw one thing that said other government spending for 121,000. People may not understand what that's for. I don't understand what that's for. So maybe something like that, more approach to the layman, so to speak, would be more just digestible and bring more people out.
Yeah, these budgets sometimes do get very, very complicated. I think if people looked at the actual complete budget packet, which every single department, it's listed, here's your electricity, here's your salaries, for union people, for management people, for postage, for all of the things, they would get a better feel for what the expenses were. That is a pretty daunting project for a lot of people. We try to keep these presentations at a level that everybody can understand, because we want people to understand the budget. It's their money, and they should know where it's going.
Agreed. Yeah, most important vote in town. So yeah, I hope everybody votes. Board of Ed, you guys have any other plans to advertise this to get people?
Dr. Burrell?
70% of the budget. So
Thanks for that, Austin, because I agree, we need more people to turn out. Under Freedom of Information, the Board of Education cannot use its resources, which includes email, to encourage people to vote one way or the other. We put the date of the referendum, town meeting, those kinds of things out there. We put information out there, but we can't advocate for the budget. Parents certainly can do that, PTO can do that, other organizations. So, yeah, good.
Yes, and on that subject, if I could just, John just reminded me of something. Bethel, about 12 years ago, decided to send out a mailer to every resident asking them to vote. One resident got very, very upset, stating that he felt that that mailer was encouraging people to vote yes. I saw it. It was just, please go out and vote. Here it is. And the town got sued, and the town lost that case. So you have to be very careful. We have to put out, here's the date, here's a referendum, here's the budget. Please come out and vote. You have to be really careful.
thanks.
Everybody
Thank you.
does get a postcard, correct, Mr. Dunn?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody care to ask a question or speak in favor of or against the budget? And again, please preface your comments as to what you're doing. Anybody? Okay, we got a couple here. I see Mrs. Correa and Ms. Doherty, I think. So Ms. Correa first, and then Ms. Doherty, and then Scalera. Okay. Why don't anybody that just had their hand up come sit up in the front row? That way it'll be easier. Anybody else, too, who didn't have their hand up and may want to speak, just please come over here. And again, name and address for the record, and whether you speak in favor of, against, or who you're asking the question of, please.
Irene Correa, 45 West Wisconsin Road. So I am in favor of the town budget, and my reasons are, I think it is fair and it was well thought out. I think, I like my roads paved, I like them plowed, I like my tree limbs trimmed, I love the Greenway, I love Cadigan. I love our beautiful new turf at the high school. If anybody hasn't seen it, I would go check it out on your way out. It looks gorgeous. The school budget. I actually think I am not happy with the way the funds are distributed, and mainly because my senior has 29 students in her AP statistics class. That is well over the recommended class size. All of the business classes in the high school are over the recommended size also. So any of you that have children that have graduated, you know that smaller classes are much better for students and for the teachers because they can give more attention to those kids. Bigger classes, it's just harder, especially in an AP class. It's a college level class. And the board did not do anything to recommend any, additional teachers at the high school level to, reduce those class sizes. And that bothers me because I also have, personally, twins coming up into the high school. Are they going to be stuck in a class with 29, 28 kids? It's just not fair. So I'm definitely in favor of the town. I am mixed on the school budget. I just think they need to distribute the money differently to make it better for all the kids at all grade levels. Thank you.
Okay, who's next? Mr. Hardy? Wait, she was first and then you.
Sorry.
Everybody that had their hand up will get to talk. So.
Well, I'm glad that Irene is short too. Jillian Doherty, 49 Hop Brook Road. I wasn't really prepared to say anything this evening, but I want to speak in support of both budgets. In my experience, when the education budget does not pass, well, A, it costs us money to go back and do a referendum again. B, I have yet to see them raise the education budget because we say no, too low. They're going to cut it. If they cut it, that goes kind of across the board because a lot of the things that you all are complaining about are in the fixed categories for how much they cost. What Irene just spoke to involves hiring more teachers. What does that cost? It costs money. You take money out of the budget, because that's what's going to happen if we vote it down. Then that's fewer teachers. Even going forward after this, oh, we'll put it back later. No, you won't, because you never do. So I just want to encourage everybody to vote yes for both budgets.
Thank you. Mrs. Scalera?
Erin Scalera, 5 Jackson Drive. I wish I could vote for both budgets, but I can't. I have a really hard time as a parent and a taxpayer that we are very administrative heavy on the Board of Ed side. We have a ton of administrators, now we have coaches, and none of them are providing direct instruction to our students. In my opinion, we need to get back to basics, and we need to better support our teachers, our service providers, and our paras, as they're the very people responsible for our children's continued learning and growth. I mean, I've been vocal for 2 years over, the way we treat our vulnerable students, and I'll continue to do it. Every child deserves an education. Every child is legally entitled to a free and appropriate education, and it's not happening in Brookfield. I hope one day I can stand up here and tell you it is, but right now, it's not. So we have to get back to basics. We have to roll up our sleeves, and you gotta get down and figure out what is going on at the lower levels. I can't support a budget when kids are not getting what they need. It really is criminal. So we're talking about a Board of Education budget that's 6.43% increase originally. Now it's a 4.99% increase. I don't know many people that are getting a raise of 6.43% or 4.99%, although a few may be based on merit. But typically a 3% increase is what you're seeing. A 5% increase for our kids to gain 2% in test scores with all these coaches, which is more administration. Where is the money going? And as a parent, I might be able to support a budget if I knew where the money was going, if I saw results, if my kid was being serviced. I really have a hard time here with it. And I really have a question for the Board of Ed. We know the key drivers: special education, transportation, salaries, and long-term, short-term subs. What are we doing about that line item? What are we doing?
Dr. Burrell, Mrs. Youngblood, anybody? Dr. Youngblood, I'm sorry.
Do you want to come up, man?
all the plans that we publicized and talked about, we're working on. We talked about the correct report with special education. We have a strategic plan. We actually, in terms of the commentary about where does administrative money go, this year, in this year's budget, we actually reduced an administrator. For next year, we've reduced one of our instructional coaches. So we have four long-time curriculum specialists who we added the instructional coaching duties to, and then in net, going forward next year, have 2 additional folks for more of the requirements in social studies and sciences through the state standards. So those are a lot of what's going on there. Important in the budget, Mr. Dunn talked about it very briefly in the Board of Ed budget, the cost of doing business, whether it's electricity or oil or whatever, all of those things are going up. Health insurance, thankfully, only went up 2%. We're estimating 2% for next year. Originally, in that 6% budget that was proposed, health insurance was going up, we estimated 7%. So that was a real help to the budget. But the other part is we have collectively bargained contracts, typically our 3-year contracts. They're in the 3 to 4% essentially range in terms of an increase, and 80% of the budget is staff. So that's the bulk of the increase in terms of status quo. And then we have our inputs, like the new reading program, the bilingual teacher, which is a state law, the new reading program, K-3, is a state mandate, so it's pretty detailed in the budget for everybody to see. So that's what's going on.
So I think as a parent, I would like to see a focus on all state mandates, all state requirements, not just the ones that we can pick and choose, because special education is a state mandate. So, again, we're hemorrhaging. We can't stick to a budget. We don't stick to a budget. We have to continuously go to the Board of Finance for money. I get it. I get there's contingencies. I get we can't plan for it. But we have so many budget items that were left flat that we run over budget constantly. So really, are we presenting a budget that we intend to stick to, or are we presenting a budget that we know the town will bail us out on?
Thank you. Ms. Case?
Yes.
If anybody else would like to speak or ask a question, please come to the front row and we'll get everybody up.
Good evening, Deborah Case, 21 Meadowview Drive. I am in support of the townside budget. I do agree that it is very conservative. I do appreciate that. The only thing that I do wish that we had seen is bigger facilities for our police department. I believe that we are in desperate need of that. We've totally outgrown our resources here, and I would like to see something going on within this year, and especially into next year as well. Can you?
Mr. Young?
I can address that. We are going to be creating, I'm going to propose to the Board of Selectmen and the town that we create a committee to study the police building. It is clearly not of a size it needs to be now. The state did pass the Police Accountability Act, which is going to require the town to make changes both to the way we police and the certifications we have. We have to continually move up in certifications, but it also makes changes in how our buildings are built and the facilities that we have within those buildings. So we will be forming a commission, a committee, ad hoc, to study those, to work with the police department, to work with the police board, to begin to flesh out, just like we're doing with the community center, to see what we need, what's the bare minimum we need, what's the goal, what would be, the Taj Mahal, right? I don't think we're going to go there ever, but we do need to address that. We do. And it's a multi-year project.
Right, and when were you planning on doing that?
In the next couple months, I think we're going to start that, right?
All right, great, thank you. Sadly, I am not in support of the BOE budget. I too had my 3 key drivers that drive up the budget, and that is with the transportation, special education, and the teacher fulfillment. So, Dr. Burrell, you didn't address those to my liking, so can you please come up and answer? What do we plan on doing about special education and the bleeding that we're doing?
Dr. Pearl?
We are hemorrhaging funds in the special education arena on the budget. What are we doing about it? What is the plan?
So on a monthly basis, we analyze the finances for the budget. One of the things we're actually working on is making sure we can bring more students back from outplacement. Mr. Rowland has been working on that. I think we're at 29, and typically we've been at 31 students, so that's something we're doing. In addition to that, we are in the process, I think it'll be May 22nd, we'll be presenting the strategic plan, so we'll have our details there. And the recommendation from the CREC report that I know you're aware of, we've been working on those and trying to address all of those as we go.
Okay, and as you know, I did not support the CREC report. I thought it was a waste of funds. It was in excess of 35,000 plus, right?
Approximately.
Yeah. Most
That
of
was
those,
used with the ARP
Yes.
IDEA funds. It wasn't operational funds from the town.
it
Grant
doesn't
monies.
even
I
matter
just
that
want you to
those
know
were
that.
funds that I feel could have been used elsewhere. Most of those findings were already things that parents like myself come to at every meeting and discuss, and was actually validation for all the times that we were blatantly ignored by the board in regards to situations that are happening in our schools regarding special education students not being serviced properly.
Thank you.
Is that a-
Answer
is
as
that a
best as I
que- is that a
can here.
question?
If there's individual case situations, we can have those conversations privately.
Okay, and then also transportation. What are we doing about transportation? Because we went over budget again this year on that.
We have our transportation, we have a contract with Ed Advance, we're working to consolidate runs, so that's something we're doing with the vans and transportation. And other than that, continuing to work for the
So
best
you're
deals we can
speaking
find.
about special education transportation.
That's what you were
right?
asking specifically.
No, I'm
Oh,
asking transportation in general.
okay, we have a 5-year contract with All-Star, so that's our transportation contract.
So just All-Star has been out of budget.
I don't know specifically which to budget.
Because we're blaming
Athletics? Are you talking about
transportation.
athletics?
Don't talk over each other,
We're
please.
blaming
Ask the question and somebody answer it.
Right,
okay?
so we're blaming transportation with special education transportation, or, because whenever we talk about going over the budget with transportation, usually somebody from the board speaks about special education.
Oftentimes, it's transportation with special education.
Okay.
And it's we've been estimating that going forward.
Okay, because I do know that we're going way over budget in regard to late start with athletics, having to hire coaches for busing for athletics.
Okay, so the athletics transportation, that had to do with the bus shortage, bus driver shortage, and not having drivers available to drive
then,
hold on, I'm trying to answer it.
Let me answer.
To drive the All-Star transportation, so we had to go to private transportation carriers to make sure the kids got there. So
Okay.
that's what that is for.
Do you think that was a responsible budget turnover change to start a late start program and the height of a national bus driver shortage?
That was delayed a year because of COVID. Actually, I think we ended up delaying 2 years, and we went forward with that, and we were assured by All-Star that they would have enough drivers, and they didn't. And it's not unlike schools that didn't change start times or didn't change their bus runs. The driver
Right, but
shortage,
knowing
and that's
that-
settling down quite a bit, actually. We have more
Okay.
drivers in the pipeline.
But knowing that now, we still are going to be in the same predicament for next year.
Not necessarily. If All-Star can get enough drivers in the pipeline and licensed
Have you
driver
checked with
students.
All-Star for next year?
Casey works with All-Star quite often, yes.
And what is the plan for going forward for next year for All-Star? Are we going to have to depend on the coach?
Let her answer.
Yes, so the budget for next year is increased for athletic transportation due to what we were seeing currently when we put this budget together. Based on new information and new drivers being able to be hired by All-Star, we have reduced that increase. So while there is an increase in athletic transportation for next year, it's not as high as we thought. It looks like this spring season, we are able to use much more of our All-Star buses and those drivers for the athletic transportation routes. So we're hopeful that we'll be in a much better position next year.
Okay, and then fulfillment, what are we currently using for hiring substitute teachers?
So we use a company called ESS, which is a company that supplies individuals when we have shortages for either teachers or paras in our buildings. The alternative is to have our own individual employees and our own employee to manage all of those employees, and there can be anywhere from 15 to 22, 24 call-outs at any given point in the year and on every day. So I think the average right now, we're averaging about 20 substitutes needed across all 3 buildings in our district every single day. So we are paying that service provider to supply those employees. They are ESS employees. They're not employees of the school district, which also, has its own benefits of unemployment costs and all those other things that we don't have to take on as a school district. And the fill rate is all done through that company.
Right, and how much have we spent towards ESS this year?
We are well over budget this year, as we have been in many years leading up to this current year.
What is that figure?
We are over 400,000. I think the projection for the end of the year is about $525,000 for substitute costs. Correct.
We're bleeding there.
Okay, that's right around what we have been spending year over year for the last 4 years.
Okay, so now my second question leading into the ESS is who qualifies those teachers? Do we leave it up to ESS?
Absolutely.
Okay, because my question is, when I see that a job posting comes available, it says what the musts are, certified teachers, right?
Is this related, is this a budget?
Yes,
Or
it's a
we
budget
okay.
question, it's leading
Or
into a
hiring
budget question.
question, okay.
It's a hiring question because we're bleeding funds in that arena, so I'd like to know the process. Can you answer
For
that?
process for,
Yeah, I can just share with you the actuals over the last several years for our substitute costs. And this isn't what was budgeted, but it's what was actually spent. So, and in COVID, 2020, 21, that was a partial COVID year, so that's a little bit lower because we weren't in school. So the actual spend for substitute costs in that year was $358,000 for short-term subs. The following year, 2021-22, it was $572,544. The following year, 2022-23, was $529,425. We adopted a budget this year, which was in line with where we were budgeted year over year. Like I said, we are running well over that, but also in line with what our actual spend has been over the last 3 years. We did contract with ESS midterm in COVID, I believe, and so it's been consistent.
Right, so that's an awful lot of money that we're spending in ESS. So now my question is, what are we doing to make sure that we hire the best through ESS since we are spending that money? What is the process?
we regularly meet with ESS, and they have their defined process for how they hire.
They do, not us.
They're contracted, and the substitutes are employees of ESS. Their
The
background
reason why-
checks, their certification checks,
No,
and
back
all
and
those
forth,
kind of things.
folks, let him answer.
Yeah, we're getting past the budget question.
The reason why I ask is because I've seen where we ask for certified teachers when we're hiring, and then when I've gone on to ESS, they said that it's recommended but not required.
So for substitutes, there's different thresholds from the State Department of Education. So I believe it's up to 60 days you can have a substitute in a classroom that isn't actually certified in that particular certification area.
Okay, and you do know what I'm leading up to
I
here.
understand. I absolutely understand.
So I'm going to make it quite clear.
We're in contact on that.
Right, so I just want to make it quite clear to the public, because if you know something, you need to say something. This year, my own child,
And I can't talk about that. You can talk about that. I can't talk about your
it.
child.
I go to the board meetings all the time. I let them know what's going on. Other friends let them know what's going on. Our children are not getting service properly. It falls on deaf ears. We're viewed as the complaints, the nags, the ones that are just, oh, those mothers again, or oh, those parents again. This year, my child was struggling. Reached out to many administrators. What is going on? So my child, in the end, who's a special ed student, was supposed to be getting a certified special ed teacher. She was not getting a certified special ed teacher. Unfortunately, I had to file a complaint with the state. Just this Friday, I found out that there were multiple violations. The district now owes my child a full year of compensatory services. That is something that we all need to be concerned about. Not only was my child failed and restitution needs to be made on her, but we all pay for it. I'm sorry, but you failed my child and I hope your budget fails. You never listen to us. There's so many committees. There's committees for everything. We're the same parents that come into board meetings week after week after week. Never one time did anyone say, let's get this group of parents, let's sit down and talk with them, let's see what's going on with them, let's hear them. Well, our children are entitled to the same education that any other child is entitled to, but we didn't get it. And this was validation for me when I got that letter on Friday. Shame on the district, shame on you. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments pertaining to the budget? If there's not, we will, I'm sorry.
Irene Correa, 45 West Wisconsin. Forgot to say this before when I was talking about class sizes. Brookfield Public Schools, their flyer, the first thing they put on here is maintain class size within BOE guidelines. And I just want to give a history. My daughter is class of 2024. They were always called the bubble class. They were very big. They were always 240 kids. I think they're about 230 right now, with all the kids moving in and out of the district. I believe they are still the largest class in the district. And you follow the trend with this class sizes over the years from center school all the way through. It was this red box that always went down. And they were like, they're the bubble class, they're the bubble class. I was tired of hearing about the bubble class. And it's still a problem now. 29 kids in an AP Stats class is too many, okay? And they're saying it right here, maintain guidelines, they're not. This was brought up at one of the BOE meetings. They didn't say, oh, well, it'll cost more money to get another teacher. They could take one of the coaches and put them as a math teacher, or have them teach 2 classes at the high school. Break down those classes and make them smaller. It can be done. Thank you.
Anybody else? If not, the motion before the body is to hold the referendum between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. And I ask Mrs. DeStefano to correct me if I'm wrong. As recommended, that's the date recommended by the Board of Selectmen on the proposed budgets and respective advisory questions as proposed by the Board of Finance for Tuesday, May 21st at St. Marguerite's Church and at Brookfield High School for Districts 2 and 3. I believe question 1 is the school budget, question 2 is the school budget advisory question 3 is the town budget, question 4 is the town budget advisory question, and I believe question 5 is also a capital question that was voted on at a previous town meeting. Am I correct with those, Andrea?
Question 1 is town budget.
Oh, I had them reversed.
I'm sorry, I have to go to my email to pull that up. I thought I had.
I'm looking at the call, that's why.
Okay, I've got it.
And so everybody is aware that if the budget, if we have to go to multiple referendums, it would be every 14 days, I believe. Is that it, Andrea? Question 1 is this. I just have to do this because we didn't read the resolution earlier, so. Yep, that's what I got. Same one, yep, okay.
That's the template, that's the way it's gonna go to the paper.
It's in the order that I said. Thank you. All those in favor of setting Tuesday, May 21st, signify by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye. Is there any opposed? Thank you. One in opposition. Now we will hear our annual report from our town treasurer, John Lucas.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening. As Brookfield's town treasurer, I attest to the fact that our financial report, as audited for our last fiscal year end of June 30th, 2023, is true and correct to the best of my knowledge and belief. Thank you.
Reports on the town website, I believe. Your annual reports on the town website. We're working on it, okay. Thank you, Treasurer Lucas. with having met for the purpose of setting a date for the referendum and accomplished that, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Belden. Is there a second? Thank you, Mrs. Scalero. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Everybody, please vote on May 21st.